Hello everyone and welcome to Uz Report World News Broadcasting with me, Davron Jumayev. The President of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, addressed the plenary session of the UN Human Rights Council on Monday. Mirziyoyev spoke in detail about the priorities of deepening democratic transformations in the country and major directions of work within the framework of the Human Rights Council.
The virtual session of the Council took place in Geneva. The event hosted the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, the High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet, the heads of states, governments, foreign ministers and high representatives from about 150 countries of the world.
Hurmatli anjuman ishtirokchilari, O'zbekistonda demokratik o'zgarishlarni yanada chuqurlashtirish.
Uzbekistan attended the meeting for the first time as a member of the United Nations Human Rights Council. Shavkat Mirziyoyev started his speech by emphasizing the priority of ensuring fundamental human rights and freedoms in Uzbekistan. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development shall be implemented in Uzbekistan in accordance with the UN principle to ensure the rights and legal interests of every person. The second topic the President touched upon was the issues of gender policy and that the country intends to radically increase the role of women in the Republic. This year, Uzbekistan is planning to hold a Women Leaders Dialogue of Central Asian states and the Regional Women's Business Forum in Uzbekistan, said Mirziyoyev. He also noted the special priority to be given to ensure the rights of people with special needs. A new law on the rights of persons with disabilities has recently come into force in the country. In the near future, the Parliament of Uzbekistan is set to ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. President informed the participants about Uzbekistan's successful accomplishment of profound work in terms of the eradication of forced and child labor jointly with the International Labour Organization and the World Bank. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize that Uzbekistan, as a member of the Human Rights Council, shall protect and actively promote the universal principles and norms of the international human rights law, concluded Mirziyoyev.
Muloqoti va xotin-qizlarning mintaqaviy biznes forumini o'tkazishni rejalashtirmoqdamiz.
January was the first month in 3 years that Uzbekistan did not sell a single gram of gold, State Statistics Committee data show. The country started the previous 2 years with an active sale of precious metal. There were periods when the sale of gold accounted for 50% of all exports and more. The main exported goods this year were industrial goods, food products and chemicals. Foreign trade has dipped by $657.6 million or 22.2% to $2.3 billion. The country's main trading partners are still China and Russia. Foreign trade turnover with the CIS countries has reached $905 million. The volume of exports with these states has amounted to $289.3 million, with a volume of imports comprising $615.8 million. State-owned enterprises in Uzbekistan will have to make previously confidential indicators public, according to a recent decree signed by the government. Disclosure concerns the main directions and objectives of the company's activities, authorized capital and its distribution, the organizational structure, vacant, unoccupied, unused, non-current asset, and the list of persons affiliated with the company. It also applies to quarterly information on the implementation of the business plan and development strategy, the balance sheet and the financial results, the scope of enterprise management, compliance with management rules, information about procurement, including a full list of purchased goods. At the end of the year, a company is bound to publish the results of an assessment of its activities, information on the structure and major transactions with affiliates, information on the amount of benefits, reports on the balance sheet and financial results, the conclusion of the audit of the results of the company's activities. Uzbekistan's Art and Culture Development Foundation under the Ministry of Culture continues to introduce audio description technology in the theaters of Tashkent. Until February 24th, the capital's residents will be able to enjoy the theater performances and ballet with an audio accompaniment featuring Russian actress and title commentator Irina Bezrukova.
In the Republican Puppet Theatre, the performances are now staged following the needs of visually impaired children. This will further their social adaptation and help them enjoy the plays along with the other children, said Russian actress Irina Bezrukova. Besides, the bright pictures, mimics and character moves have come to life for children experiencing eyesight problems.
Дети в восторге, и прозвучала фраза «оказывается».
Children are so happy. I heard some of them saying it turned out to be such an interesting play. Commenting on the play helps kids perceive it 70% better than if they just listen to the performance. This is very important, especially to those kids who must feel themselves like ordinary ones. They should feel as comfortable as sighted children and understand why children sitting next to them are laughing when I'm depicting that some of the characters raped someone or someone dropped something. They understand the moves of the characters right away. It is important to make them laugh with the rest of the audience. To see more happy faces, it is important to establish a corresponding personnel training system.
Это очень просто. Можно отправить одного или...
This is very simple. You can send 1 or 2 specialists to study in Moscow, and they will receive an education in 2 months. Besides, there are grants in our country. Art, Science and Sport Charity Foundation, founded by Alisher Usmanov, provide grants for training. I will be the instructor. It is possible to apply for a grant and provide your specialist with specialized training courses. I will be teaching at the corresponding institute, and our Moscow Provincial Theatre may provide them with the internship. We have been successfully practicing it for 7 years. On February the 23rd, Irina Bezrukova will also take part in an international conference on the employment of persons with disabilities, where she will share her experience in implementing projects in the field of inclusion.
The French government is intending to allocate 145 million euros for a project to improve water supply in Tashkent, a move set to expand the Uzbek population's access to drinking water. Details of the project were on agenda of negotiations between Deputy Prime Minister Sardor Murzakov and the French Suez delegation headed by Executive Vice President Eric Gebali. The parties are also in talks to launch similar projects in Karakalpakstan, Bukhara and Kashgaria regions. The world-famous State Museum of Arts in Karakalpakstan, named after Zavisky, will soon be exhibiting the Uzbek collection at the Zimerli Museum of the United States. This was announced following the talks of Ambassador of Uzbekistan to the United States, Javlon Vahobov, with the director of the American Art Museum, Donna Gustafson.
The Zimerli Art Museum is located in the state of New Jersey. Its collection includes more than 60,000 objects from ancient to modern art. The museum is rich in collections of French art of the 19th century, Russian and Soviet nonconformism. Donna Gustafson stressed that the Zavisky Museum is one of the unique institutions in the world, whose collection can compete with the world's collections. And the preservation of such a rich assemblage in a remote region of the country deserves respect.
The production of cars at Uzauto Motors decreased fourfold in January due to the suspension of the work of the Asaka plant in late December and January. An increase in production was observed only for Damas and Labo models, which are produced in Khorasan.
The State Statistics Committee reported that the production of cars in Uzbekistan fell 4.2 times, or 5,235 vehicles. Last year, the company produced only 22,000 cars. The production of trucks decreased from 272 to 250. Automobile engines from 19,800 to 1,900. On February the 12th, Uzauto Motors reported a temporary suspension of sales of Spark, Nexia, Cobalt, and Lacetti due to the installation of a new automated business process management system.
Uzbekistan has reduced imports of timber and wood products to $566.8 million. According to the State Statistics Committee, this figure is $45.1 million less than in 2019. Deliveries came from 50 countries, with Russia's share staying at 90%.
The largest share of imported timber and wood products last year came from Russia, $520 million, or 91.7% of all imports, followed by China with $18.8 million, Turkey $6.5 million, Belarus and several other Asian and European countries. The share of imports of wood and wood products in the commodity structure of Uzbekistan's imports from the Eurasian Economic Union is 78%.
Have a good life. We will see you soon.
U.S. President Donald Trump will appear in public for the first time since leaving office last month, speaking at a meeting of the U.S. Conservative Political Action Conference, or CPAC. A source familiar with Trump's plans told Reuters, quote, he'll be talking about the future of the Republican Party and the conservative movement. His address will come as his Republican Party appears riven between a faction unwaveringly loyal to the 45th president and another seeking to put Trump behind them. The former reality TV star's tumultuous 4 years in office were capped off by his Trump's second impeachment trial, this time on charges he incited an insurrection that led to the violent Capitol riot on January 6th. 10 Republican representatives and 7 Republican senators sided with Democratic lawmakers against Trump. Even though he voted to acquit, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell gave a blistering speech blaming Trump for the violence.
President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day.
That widened an already growing gulf between the ex-president and the most powerful elected Republican in the country. The CPAC Forum is a chance for political hopefuls and presidential contenders to prove their conservative bona fides. This year's speaker list includes former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. Notably absent from the event are 2 high-profile Republicans who were once close allies of Trump, former Vice President Mike Pence and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. Pence drew hostile criticism from the president for his role in certifying the 2020 election results despite Trump's false claims the outcome was fraudulent. Haley condemned Trump after the Capitol riot in an interview with Politico. Another source told Reuters Haley requested to meet with Trump recently at his Florida estate, but was rebuffed.
The largest U.S. oil refiners released massive clouds of air pollutants into the skies over Texas last week, as one environmental crisis triggered another. Data sent to a Texas Environmental Commission show power outages from the winter storm forced the 5 largest refiners to emit nearly 337,000 pounds of pollutants. The power losses forced the plants to flare or burn gases to prevent damage to processing units. The flaring darkened the skies of eastern Texas, with smoke visible for miles. Data show the pollutants include tens of thousands of pounds of benzene, carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, and sulfur dioxide. A researcher at advocacy group Earthworks said the releases could have been prevented by winterizing facilities. Final figures on pollution releases are due to be submitted to the state in 2 weeks. The extreme cold, which killed at least 24 people, knocked out power to more than 4 million at its peak and caused widespread water shortages for nearly 15 million people. President Joe Biden approved a major disaster declaration for the state on Saturday, which makes federal funding available to affected individuals. Though Texas power plants are back online, nearly 40,000 customers remained without power as of Sunday afternoon. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said on Sunday the U.S. had begun to communicate with Iran over the country's detention of American citizens. Iran has arrested dozens of dual nationals, including several Americans in recent years, mostly on espionage charges, which Sullivan calls a, quote, complete and utter outrage. Sullivan addressed the matter on CBS News' Face the Nation on Sunday.
Our strong message to the Iranians will be that we will not accept a long-term proposition where they continue to hold Americans in an unjust and unlawful manner. It will be a significant priority of this administration to get those Americans safely back home.
Following Sullivan's remarks, an Iranian news website affiliated with the country's Supreme National Security Council cited a source saying that any communication between Tehran and Washington about the issue had been conducted via the Swiss embassy rather than through any direct contact. The 2 countries have been at odds over who should take the first step to revive the deal, Iran demanding that the U.S. lift most sanctions, Washington saying Tehran must first return to compliance. Sullivan said the U.S. is intent on diplomacy.
First, Joe Biden is determined to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Second, he believes that hard-headed, clear-eyed diplomacy is the best way to do that. And so he's prepared to go to the table to talk to the Iranians about how we get strict constraints back on their nuclear program. That offer still stands because we believe diplomacy is the best way to do it. Iran has not yet responded.
Israel is reopening large sections of its economy again, and the country's vaccination drive has now reached almost half its population. Shopping malls and leisure facilities, among other businesses, have restarted almost exactly a year since Israel's first documented coronavirus case. The government is crediting its rapid vaccine rollout for making it possible. Israel has had one of the most aggressive and fastest vaccination drives in the world after 3 national lockdowns, which received some criticism at the time for patchy enforcement. It's not a complete return to normal. Social distancing is still being enforced. Access to gyms, hotels, and theaters are also being restricted to people with what's called a green pass. The pass certifies that a person has had both doses of a vaccine for more than a week, or that they've recovered from COVID and are presumed to have immunity. Likewise, middle schools are still closed. High schools and elementary schools are open, but only in towns where the disease is under control. The government has pledged not to have a fourth lockdown, although an official in charge of pandemic response has said that with half the country not yet immune, it's still a possibility. Who caused this oil spill? Israel is trying to track down the ship responsible for an oil spill that's left clumps of tar up and down its Mediterranean coast, a mess that officials say will take months or years to clean up. Thousands of volunteers have turned out to help out with the disaster, and the military is deploying to assist. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also toured the area. Authorities are warning everyone else, though, to keep their distance. The event began last week during a winter storm, which made it harder to see the tar approaching and deal with it at sea, according to local officials. A fin whale was also found washed up on a beach with oil-based material in its body, although further tests are pending. The government says 9 ships were in the area that are being investigated. If found, the country could take legal action.
Up to 130,000 protesting farmers and farm workers gathered in India's Punjab state on Sunday, according to police estimates. It's the latest show of strength against the new farm laws that's seen protests across the country for months. It was one of the largest of the demonstrations to date. Tens of thousands of Indian growers have already been camped outside Delhi. Opponents of the law say it hurts farmers at the benefit of large corporations. This farmer at the protest says he wants the laws repealed and that, quote, people should be able to afford food. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government, which introduced the laws last September, has offered to defer the laws but refused to abandon them. He argues that legislation will help farmers get better prices. Both sides have met for several rounds of negotiations but failed to make any headway. Farmers' unions have vowed to carry on the protests until the laws are rolled back. At Sunday's rally at a grain market in Barnala, a town in Punjab, union leaders outlined plans to mobilise farmers from across the state and move to a protest site outside Delhi later this month.
These were the top headlines for today. Stay safe and goodbye.